I've been wanting to make this video for a while now. I've just been trying to work up the emotional state to be able to sit down and make it, and I've had a lot of people ask me to make this video to talk about my experience, and I think I'm finally ready to talk about it. I just want to preface this a little bit with saying that this video is not meant to be political in any way. I don't want it to be any kind of controversial or anything like that. This has been a really hard time for a lot of people right now, and this is solely meant to be a recount of my experience dealing with COVID-19. And I would just please ask you to keep that in mind while you're viewing this video, and also while you're posting any comments. I wanted to make this video because I've had a lot of people ask me what it was like to have COVID. A lot of people have asked me questions about it, and then a lot of people have told me that sharing my story might help others who are going through it. So that's really why I'm making this, is just to maybe help some people if they can hear about what I went through. So in March of this year, 2020, I got COVID-19, and how I first noticed something was wrong was on March 19th. I started feeling tired. I started having a little bit of cold, like just a little bit of postnasal drip, a little bit of a sore throat. I really just felt like I had a cold coming on. I was running a low-grade fever. It wasn't to 100.4 yet. I was in the upper 99s, like 100.1 area. So for 2 days, I had those symptoms. I really just thought I had a cold coming on. The third day, I started running a higher fever. It was above 100.4, and it stayed right, or actually around 101 for a couple days after that. I started to feel more like this was definitely something more than a cold. I just felt tired all the time. I had no energy. I started to get muscle aches and pains, and for a while I wondered if it could be the flu. But I just knew something was wrong. So I made the choice to quarantine myself in actually this room. I wouldn't let anybody share a bathroom with me. I wouldn't let people bring me food. I wouldn't, like, if anybody was gonna bring me food, I made them sit like completely away where only I was gonna go. I made them wear gloves, masks, everything, because I just wanted to make sure I didn't give this to anybody else. So I quarantined myself, which was a good thing that I did. So over the next couple of days, I sustained the fever. I was still feeling just fatigued. I hurt. At this point, I had lost my sense of taste and smell, and that's when I really started to question, could this be coronavirus? At this point, people on the media were just starting to say this could be a new symptom. So I was like, yeah, that's probably what I have. But I was hoping that, everybody was saying, oh, it gets worse and then it'll get better. So I just kept quarantining myself. But then I started to feel a pressure in my chest, which I've had pneumonia before. And just in case anybody happens to be watching this that doesn't actually know me, I am a pharmacist. So I knew that this pressure in my chest was not a heart attack. It was something different, but I just want to put this out there in case if you do have pressure or pain in your chest, please, please, please seek medical attention. But I knew personally that this was not a heart attack. This was something else it felt like when I had pneumonia. So I figured, okay, it'll get worse, then it'll get better. I also want to point out that I never had a cough through my entire COVID experience. That was not one of my symptoms, which just goes to show that this is a crazy virus. It affects people in all different ways. I knew I was starting to get worse. I was having a lot more trouble breathing. I was just burning up all the time, and I knew that this was bad. One of the hardest nights though was I was awake. It was probably around midnight, and I heard somebody get up in the kitchen. When I had COVID, I felt so bad. I had a headache, I hurt all over, I had a fever. It was the worst I've ever felt in my life. So if I got a couple hours of sleep a day, that was good. But I heard somebody get up, and I texted my mom and I asked her what was wrong, and she replied that my dad had started running a fever. And you know, that was one of my biggest fears, was giving it to my parents. Just, you know, because they were saying that it affects people who are older more than younger people. And I just remember sitting in bed and just crying, just thinking to myself, like, I just killed my dad. Like, I just gave him COVID and that's what's gonna kill him. And just the grief that I felt at that moment. I don't want anybody to have to go through that. But luckily, he ended up being okay. So that was one positive thing. He did also have COVID. And he did end up going to the hospital for a week, but luckily he made it out of the hospital before I did. So he's okay. So on about day 9 of my quarantining, self-quarantining, I had gotten to the point where my pneumonia had gotten so bad that I couldn't walk across my bedroom without feeling like I just ran a marathon. And I knew that if I didn't go to a hospital, then I wasn't gonna be able to kick this myself. My dad ended up driving me to the hospital, and I went to the emergency room. They took a chest x-ray and said I definitely had pneumonia. They did a lovely nasal swab, and they were able to confirm that I did have COVID-19. So they admitted me to the hospital, and this was, I don't know if I said it already, but this was March 27th. I was feeling, still terrible. I was feeling awful for the first couple of days, but my oxygen saturation was good. Other than the things that were really the worst was I hurt so bad. My head hurt so bad. Had such a high fever that I was in between burning up, and we were just packing as many ice packs as we could possibly get on my body to try and cool me down, try and break the fever, or I would freeze to death. And I would ask all the nurses for more blankets, as many blankets as I could get. So I wasn't sleeping, it was awful. And when you have COVID in the hospital, nobody can come see you. So that makes things even harder. So I was checked in on the 27th, then on March 30th, my oxygen saturation had dropped. So when I first got there, I had an oxygen nasal cannula. On the 29th, we had changed it to a high flow oxygen nasal cannula, so I could try and get more oxygen into my body to be absorbed in my tissues. But my oxygen saturation was still dropping. So on March 30th, I was actually sleeping for once, and I got a phone call in my hospital, on my hospital phone, and when I answered it, it was one of the physicians that was taking care of me, and she told me that over the course of 12 hours, my oxygen saturation had dropped dramatically. So to give you reference from this, normally my oxygen saturation is around 98-99%. When we switched me to the high flow nasal cannula, my oxygen saturation was in the 80s. I believe it was around 86%. But now it had dropped to in the high 60s, which is not good. So she told me that they were going to electively intubate me. They were gonna put me on a ventilator just to make sure that I was getting the oxygen that I needed. And at first I remember, because I could see, I had a window on my doors in the hospital, so I could see out and I could see what felt like at the time every doctor like in the hospital out there. But there must have been 4 or 5 different people that had all these machines and stuff. I was scared, and I have had experience where I've seen people on ventilators, and I have seen how painful of an experience that is for them. So at first I actually told her, no, I'm okay, I'll see how this goes. But she convinced me, we talked for a little bit, she convinced me that this probably was for the best because I was not getting better, I was getting worse. And she reassured me that they were going to keep me unconscious the entire time. So they were going to sedate me the entire time I was on the ventilator. So everything happened pretty quickly from that point. And so you kind of, at that point, like, I had come to this realization that, like, this is getting bad. This is something that we don't know about. This is something that is making me not breathe. At that point, I had accepted the fact that that was gonna be it. That that's how I was gonna go. And, you know, there was nothing I could do about it at that point but hope for the best. So I had enough time to call some of the people that I love and just tell them what was going on and tell them that if I didn't make it, that I loved them. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Sorry. So from about the time where I received the phone call that I was going to be intubated, it was probably about 30 minutes until the anesthesiologist came into my room and started talking to me, asking me questions, told me what was going to go on. They decided that since I was going to be intubated, I was going to be fed through a nasogastric tube, so they put a tube in my nose, and that's how I was being fed. At this point, I had what's called a midline in my arm, and I'm gonna put some links in the little description of this video. So I don't want to go into a whole bunch of medical stuff right now because I don't want this video to be too terribly long. But just in case I say anything that you want to know some more information about, I'll put some links to some pretty descriptive sites down there so you can read a little bit more into it. So I had a midline in my left arm, but they also elected to put a central line in my neck. And so they knocked me out. That was the last thing I remember, was it being March 30th. And so I am gonna tell you now about what actually happened during this time when I was intubated, because I was sedated. I don't really know what exactly happened, so I've had to gathered this information from looking through my medical chart and from asking my family like what the nurses said. So I was intubated. They put a central line in, and then I was not really getting any better. My O2 sats were still going down. I went through what is called a cytokine storm, which again, I'll put some information to that in the comment section or in the description section down below. And my body basically just shut down. At this point, they were not using Remdesivir as frequently as they are the time I'm recording this video. So I was not given Remdesivir. However, I was given 2 doses of a medication called Tocilizumab, which again I'll put in the description. And that seemed to help a lot. They also had to put me in what is called a prone position, so I was laying on my stomach to get me to breathe, because even while I was on the ventilator I wasn't breathing as well as I should. So I was on the ventilator for a couple days, and then I finally seemed to be getting better. So they were able to take me off the ventilator, and then after that time it was less than 24 hours where I started to decline again, and I had to be put back on a ventilator. This time I was successfully able to get better from being on the ventilator and being on all the medications that they had me on. They had me on a variety of antibiotics, pretty much like anything they could think of to try. We were trying it, and I had such a great medical team who just truly cared about me, and I'm so grateful to them, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them and everything they did for me while I was on the ventilator. So I came off the ventilator. Finally, yay, I got better. So I came off the ventilator on April 15th, and I remember waking up very groggy. I still had the central line in my neck, which when I realized it was in my neck, I was honestly happy, because that means that they could pull blood from my neck instead of having to stick me all the time. Which I know to most people that sounds weird, but so my pulmonologist, who was taking care of my lungs, came in and said, "Oh, you're awake, good." And then they asked me if I knew what day it was, and I said no, because when they told me they were going to put me on the ventilator, we were thinking it was going to be maybe 2-3 days. So I said no, I didn't know what day it was. And he said, "Do you know what month it is?" And I said, "March." And he said, "No, honey, you came here in March, but it's April 15th. And to hear that coming from somebody's mouth, and then seeing on the TV where they say it's a completely another month that you've missed out on, you missed birthdays, you missed holidays, you missed so much. It's a lot to take in, but at the same time you're like, I did it, like I made it." And it's just this clashing of emotions that's really hard to put into words. So I was in the hospital for over another week. I was finally able to be discharged on April 21st. So I got in on March 27th, left on April 21st. And after I got off the ventilator, you know, I had to relearn how to walk. I had to build up my muscles again. I couldn't even put my arm over my head when I woke up, because I had been laying in bed for that long, essentially. So coming home was a really big deal. Although after you come home from the hospital when you've had COVID-19, you do have to quarantine yourself for another 14 days. So that makes it really hard not to see people as well. You've been away from people for so long and now you still can't see them. But I do want to take you back for just a moment, just to talk about, so that's what actually happened. But what I remember happening, which is kind of a crazy thing that happens when you're on anesthesia, and especially the types of anesthesia that they had to give me to keep me intubated with the ventilator, you have all these dreams and delusions, and it's not like you're just like you're not aware of anything. You are aware of people that are around you. I knew what nurses were in my room. I knew, like, I could recognize their faces, I could recognize their voices, but in my delusional state, for example, when they were intubating me and putting in my central line, I really thought this was very vivid, very real to me. You can still feel pain, you can feel all of this. I thought that I was being held captive. I thought that I was being tied to a bed at some point. Some points I thought I was being tied to a chair. I thought people were stabbing me with knives. I thought that people were trying to suffocate me. It was a hard thing to go through. I was terrified. And so your brain really thinks that this is what you've been through. And it thinks at the time that's really what's happening. So I am so sorry to my nurses, and thank you for putting up with me, but I kicked them, I hit them, because I was trying to escape what I thought was an attempted murder. But that still stays with you, and even after I came off of the medications and off the ventilator, it stays in your system for a while, and your reality is not your actual reality. I thought at one point that I was on a ship. Like, I knew I was in a hospital, but I thought I was on a ship and we were just sailing back and forth from the Bahamas, and I was so upset every time I would look at my clock in my room and it would be 8 o'clock, because I knew that that was when we left to go back to the Bahamas, and I knew I wasn't going to be discharged that day. That obviously did not happen. I thought that people were hiding things from me. I thought that people were leaving me out, that like people were just, I mean, basically they were just horrible things, because your body and your brain doesn't know what's going on, and all these medications are affecting you. So you have a very hard time when you come out of that, distinguishing what was reality and what wasn't. I thought people sat with me in my room for a long time when I got scared, and turns out nobody was allowed in my room. Those people never sat with me, but in my heart they did, so thank you to those people. But it's just a very hard thing to deal with when you come home and you start being able to talk about it, and you tell people things and they're like, no, that's not a thing, that didn't happen. So your brain is just, it's all confused. But so that was my experience in the hospital. But post-COVID, luckily, I have been doing really well. I followed up with my pulmonologist. We've done x-rays, everything. I've done lung function tests. I did not lose any lung function, which is amazing. That was one of the biggest things I was worried about. The only residual effects that I've had is one, you can probably tell my voice, where I was on a ventilator for so long, my left vocal cord got damaged, and it doesn't vibrate as much as it should. So I sound a little hoarse, a little funny. My voice is actually much better than it was when I first woke up. I had no voice at all. I actually had to write on a little whiteboard everything that I needed, everything, you know, I needed to drink. I would write on it, hold it up for my nurses. Even once I got home, I'd have to write everything on a whiteboard because I had no voice. So I have had my throat looked at, and we think that it hopefully will come back. It just is gonna take a long time, which I'm alive, I'm happy about that. I do have trouble like recalling words every once in a while, which is new also. I can describe things, but I cannot for the life of me think of specific words. The only other thing that's happened, just because I was on anesthesia for so long, which is a common thing and I figured it was going to happen, is I've lost a significant amount of my hair. I usually wear it up like this so it doesn't look like I've lost so much, but I've lost about 75% of the hair that I had, which again, I can deal with that. I'm alive, I'm healthy, so it's great. So while I am extremely lucky and fortunate and so happy that I was able to overcome this terrible virus, there is also this side where I've had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of PTSD from what I went through while I was in the hospital. I have been fortunate enough to be able to work with a therapist, and we're trying to overcome a lot of my survivor's guilt. I still have nightmares about being in the hospital, about reliving that where I thought people were trying to murder me. Sometimes I wake up terrified that this is all a dream, that I'm still in the hospital. I am so worried that I'm gonna lose people all the time. So that's some of the things that I'm still working through at this point. But I am very hopeful that it's going to get better. I'm super, super thankful to all my family and my friends. I couldn't have made it through without people that I love being there for me, and just my family's encouragement and support, even though they couldn't physically be with me. Just knowing that they were there, that's what got me through all of this. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story, and if you do have any questions about anything that I went through, anything that I said, just about COVID-19 or anything, you can leave me a comment and I will do my very best to answer it for you. So thank you again for watching my video. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you all are able to get through the rest of this crazy year as best as you can.